in Texas, and we were fortunate enough to visit with them in April. 17 of us from Ivy Tech traveled down to Texas in the midst of our Student Success Summit in French Lick, and we learned so much about all of the wonderful things that they're doing, and we are so excited to have them here today to tell you firsthand. A lot of us have tried to share the story and share all of the wonderful things that they shared with us and have done a semi-okay job. They will do a much better job than all of us today. I'll get us started with a couple slides. Corey will come up here in a few slides, and he just got breakfast, so apparently he thinks I'm going to talk for a really long time. And he'll talk to you about some of our data. Some of you have seen these slides before, these same exact slides. Some of you have seen this data before. Odessa has not, so we're excited to share some of our accomplishments and some of the things that we have done as we go to scale with our implementation and increase of 8-week courses. I'm Stacy Atkinson. I serve as I should have started that way, huh? Not real good at these. I serve as Vice Chancellor for Academic Affairs on the Richmond campus and also serve as the statewide co-lead for our 8-week course implementation. So a little bit about today. So they are here. They are up here in the table at this table, and we'll let them introduce themselves. So we won't do that for them. We'll let them introduce themselves. They're way better at introducing themselves than we would ever be. This is some of the stuff that will happen today. So the first thing you all heard, and you got an email from me the other evening, at 9 a.m. Their first session will be in this room, so you won't move for this room. And this will be live streamed. So hopefully there are 19 viewing parties happening around the state, plus all of the sites where there are, I can only imagine what's happening around the state right now as we live stream this session this morning. The second session also will happen in this room, and then there'll be 3 rounds of breakouts. And Corey, who's way better at logistical directions than I am, will explain to you sort of where to go for the 3, and then we'll be back in this room for session number 4. This table over here represents a team that has been so gracious to us. When we traveled to Midland, Texas, they put on something called a Leadership Institute. And as I mentioned earlier, it was in the midst of our Student Success Summit, which we hold annually. And the first thing that we did was like, hey guys, we really want to come, except we're going to be there earlier. Half of us are going to leave after day 2. And we'd like you to have dinner and start the session a little bit earlier. And they were like, boy, I can only imagine. They were like, these people are a lot. We went there, and they did all of those things. And they graciously shared with us all of the wonderful things that they have been doing at Odessa College. They inspired us, and last night at dinner we said, politically incorrect as this is, 17 of us left, and we had chugged the Kool-Aid. We were not drinking the Kool-Aid. We were chugging their Kool-Aid. They've done some really amazing things, and you'll hear a lot about their story, and we're excited that you all will hear it firsthand from them this morning. These are their names, and they will, again, introduce themselves as they welcome you all into their breakout sessions and the things that they'll talk about this morning. So an update, in April 2018, 17 of us went to the Leadership Institute hosted by Odessa College in Texas. In June 2018, Corey Klossman-Ryan and I took over as statewide leads for the implementation and learned very quickly that we needed help. And that's where all of you in this room came in. 80 of you serve as our campus champions, and Corey and I are so very thankful to have your assistance and all of the things that you help us do, being the frontline voices on all of the campuses and sites. In December of 2018, many of you in the room, hopefully all of you in the room, engaged in what we threw upon you as an assignment to come up with your own campus project plans in support of the implementation and increase of 8-week courses. And those were great. Corey and I buckled into a room for 3 days straight, and we went through all of them and sent everyone feedback, which is on the next slide. In May of 2019, we'll do that again. We've asked everybody to do a revamp of their project plan with our feedback and just with the changes that have happened at every single campus. These are not intended to be busy work. This is intended so that you can report upon your own project plans. This won't look the same at every single place at Ivy Tech. There are a lot of places that make up Ivy Tech Community College in Indiana, and it cannot possibly look the same. So this is a way for you to personalize that to your own campus and your campus needs. And at some point, we'd like to get to the point where you're reporting on progress based upon your completion and how far you've gotten in your own individual project plan. We do think that after May, we will get to that point, and that will be the percentage that every campus is reporting upon, instead of the fall-to-fall increase in your 8-week course sections. So I'll have to try to lean this way so I can see this. So in December, as I noted, all of the project plans were submitted. Corey and I quickly came up with a rubric that we designed together in going through all of the 19 project plans. And one of the things that we noticed is some campuses took the time and go course by course and tell us when they were going to start the development of that course, moving from a 16-week section to an 8-week course section. That was really helpful for the campuses that chose to do that. Every single campus came up with a percentage target of where they'd like to be when we would like to be at scale at the end of 2021. Our recommendation to those campuses that had not done that yet was to do that, to go back to your campuses and go course by course, have conversations with your VCAAs, have conversations with the deans and the program chairs and the faculty members that will actually move these courses from 16 weeks to 8 weeks. There's a need for an evaluation plan on every single campus. What we're asking is that you take a look at your implementation of increase and that you look at it from a 360 degree. That's Nick from Lafayette. Where are you, Nick? That's what Nick told us on the call last time we were on the call with the champions, and he said is a 360 evaluation. For students, staff, and faculty, what does this look like, what's working, and what's not working? So we asked campuses to flesh that out and flesh out a plan for evaluation. This impacts more than just the faculty. This impacts greatly student support areas on all of our campuses. And many campuses knew that and went into their project plan knowing that, and they wanted to talk about that and what they were going to do in support of those areas that were going to be impacted by this move from 16 weeks to 8 weeks. We are asking now for additional details. How will they be impacted, and what will you do in the name of said impact? There is a need for a professional development plan for faculty and staff with all that we do, but we tremendously and desperately need a plan for professional development for all faculty and staff on every single campus. So we ask campuses to go back into their project plan and work through that. And lastly, a communication plan. Some students are in panic when you tell them we're going from 16 to 8, and they're like, yeah, that's great. What does that even mean? Some faculty are like, yeah, that's great. We're on board. What does that even mean? And staff as well. So a plan for communicating these things out and communicating sort of the idea of what we're doing and why, and send the positive message out to the state. So we reviewed those plans in January, 3 very long, cold, snowy days in Indianapolis, and we will do that again in May, where it will be warmer and there'll be flowers and hopefully delicious lunch. And Corey will come up now.
Good morning. Let's try that again. Good morning.
Good morning.
So a few data points. It's important to keep in mind these are from fall 2018. This is one initial data point for us. We'll continue to track this as we move on as well. Obviously, some campuses have more courses in 8 weeks than others right now. So this will continue to evolve as we move forward with this initiative. As you can see, from fall of 17 to fall 18, the number of students and the percentage of students enrolled in an 8-week course increased by roughly 50% in both first and second 8 weeks, give or take. Not surprisingly, the number of students in 16-week courses went down, some of them in 8-week courses only. Others of them, obviously, we know, due to the enrollment decline. But we are seeing a lot more students in 8-week courses, which is a good sign. We're at 19% of our courses were in an 8-week format in fall of 17. 31% were in an 8-week format in fall of 18. For this spring, it's still a little in flux, obviously, as we know. Those second 8-week courses yet, some of them, there'll be some new ones created and some that get canceled for various reasons. It's looking like we'll probably be in the mid to upper 30% for this spring. So continue to go up, and we'll watch it for fall of 19 when we'll likely see an even bigger increase. The good news, it's an initial data point, but we're on the right track. If you compare 8-week courses to 16-week courses in fall of 18, the passing rates were 6.2 percentage points higher in 8-week courses. The bump was bigger if you just look at first 8-week courses than at second 8-week courses. This is an historical trend that we have seen over time, where passing rates in first 8 weeks always tend to be higher than second 8-week courses. Tim Kish, I know, is here somewhere. It's right up front here. Thank you, Tim. It's helping us dig into this. We are finding some explanations for why this is and what's happening that we'll be sharing more with you as we dig into this a little more. But this is a very encouraging sign. If you look just at 16-week passing rates across the bottom, we are seeing a general increase as we have moved along the last 5 to 6 years. But obviously with 8-week courses, we're seeing an even bigger bump So overall, 80% of all of our grades are passing grades in an 8-week format for fall. So this is definitely the trend we want to see, that we were expecting to see, and that we were hoping for based upon what we saw when we were down in Odessa. So definitely a good trend. As we dig in, actually, one slide ahead. When we were at dinner last night with them, one of the questions Valerie asked was, so what is happening to your withdrawal rates? We know that burnout is an issue, in particular with students. It's on the right track. These are still higher than we want them to be. We want to see them continue to go down. If we just look at grades of W, they're essentially cut in half, maybe a little less than half, so we're down now under 5%. FW grades in particular are higher than where we want them to be. We hope those will continue to go down, but we have seen a little bit of a decrease, down about 1.6 percentage points as well. So hopefully this trend is one that continues as well. Finally, as we dig into individual course grades, overall it's positive, and the ones in red are a little hard to see. Biology 101 is that third one down. It's down 0.1 percentage points, so it's essentially flat. The other two are in math, down 2.8 and 4.3%. This has been shared back with the math curriculum committee, and I don't know if we have any math faculty in here. But this is one of the things that they've been challenged as a curriculum committee to look at. Are there other things that we could be doing? Is there professional development? Is there something with the curriculum that we can do to help support students as well? You've heard President Elserman say and Kara say, and we've been saying, if we find out that this is not the right thing for student success, we'll continue to examine ways. If the best thing is 16-week courses for some of these, we'll continue to look at that. But overall, we are seeing a very encouraging data as well. In particular, I'd like to point out anatomy and physiology is up 11 percentage points, as well as a couple of the math classes, 023 and 100, are up over 12 percentage points. So this is both for fall 8-week versus 16-week as well. So very encouraging data as well thus far. We'll continue to track it. So thank you all again. Before we turn it over to our guest from Odessa, I'd like to turn it over to Andy Bound.
Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you all for joining us this morning, and thank you so much to our friends from Odessa. We're anxious to learn with you today. I'm going to go off script for just a moment, and we all have a colleague that loves to be engaged publicly. His name's Matt Hawkins. MJ, do not call him right now, because I'm going to. All right? So the good news for Matt is he turns 40 today. And so much to his chagrin and my expense, we are going to call him right now. Oh, yeah. And I'm not going to put it on speakerphone because it might not be appropriate. Good morning, Matt. How are you this morning? Good. Hey, good. Thanks for taking a second to call me, or let me call you. Hey, I'm here with a whole bunch of our friends, and I understand that, today's your birthday. And so, on the count of three, we're all going to say, Happy birthday, Matt, right? All right, here we go. 1, 2, 3.
Happy birthday, Matt!
I know I owe you. Have a great day. Bye. Thank you. Yeah. So that's Matt, CFO.
I don't do sports, Matt.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, there you go.
So for a few minutes, for a brief bit last night, we had dinner with our colleagues from Odessa, and Kim shared with us, if laughter is a sign of how successful you will be, as you all laugh together, you will be very successful. And so thank you for participating with us in that. So it is my privilege to introduce to you Kim McKay and Valerie Jones, who are going to open our session. Please welcome our friends from Odessa College.
Okay. Let's see. Is this on? Yes, sir. All right. So further proof that we are all humans, whether we sit in faculty roles, administrative roles, or student roles, please note how crowded the front row is. So just a reminder, we are all humans, and that's really what this transformation boils down to. It is too easy for us to separate and to divide and to say the students and the faculty and the staff and the administration and the system. It's the people. And that's what we're here for today. And that is why we are so proud of the work that Ivy Tech has been doing to embrace the people who are part of Ivy Tech. What I'd like to do is take just a moment to introduce the people who are here from Odessa College and ask them to stand and wave and do pretty things when their name is announced. My name is Valerie Jones. For the last 6 years, I had the tremendous joy and privilege to serve as the Vice President for Instruction at Odessa College. I've been thrilled to be part of the transformation we're going to talk with you about today. And less than 2 weeks ago, I transitioned to Lone Star College. So I'm in a new role in a big city. And I will be quoting you all a lot to them because as Lone Star College tells me, well, but we're bigger than Odessa College. I don't know that these things will work. I have the ability to say, well, the entire state of Indiana can do it, so I'm pretty sure. And joining me is Kim McKay. Kim serves as our Vice President of Student Services and Enrollment Management. She is also our cruise director, so the compliments to A, the existence of, and B, the beauty of this PowerPoint is totally to her credit. Our partnership over the years has been critical because, again, a traditional divide is between instruction and student services, and that's counterproductive. So that friendship and that collaboration has been essential. Women's restrooms are also very important. Diane Carrasco. Dr. Carrasco-Jaquez is our Senior Dean for STEM, and you will have an opportunity to visit with her later on this morning, as well as in our breakout sessions. Dr. Jennifer Myers is our Dean of Business and Industry. Dr. Oscar Gonzalez serves as our DRI for Business Professions. We had shifted to schools, hence our Deans of Schools of STEM and Business and Industry. And in that transition, we shifted from department chairs to DRIs, which we stole from Apple, directly responsible individual. So he's the only responsible one in the group. Dr. Thomas Crawford, who is a longtime professor of A&P and one of the front leaders for the 8-week term movement. So those of you who want faculty input, all 4 of those folks have been in the classroom through this transition and have a lot of input to be able to share with you. And then Ashley Warren. Ashley gets the gold star. If you can stay standing for just a moment, we're going to applaud you in just 2 seconds. Her first flight was delayed. Her second flight was delayed. She didn't get in until after 10, and they lost her luggage. So please give her a round of applause for getting here. And Ashley will be able to answer all of your questions about financial aid. She also comes from being a success coach, and so she'll be talking about the partnerships between student services and instruction and advising. So a little bit of time this morning about vision and culture. Again, that's really where this all comes from. If you approach transformations like 8-week terms or the commitments that you all have now, if you approach that as just another initiative, those folks in the system just don't have enough to do, they come up with stuff for us to do, man, it's not going to go anywhere. However, what you have committed to do is part of a national movement that recognizes higher education has not done enough for enough people, and it is our responsibility to figure out what more we can do. How can we do this better? We have to be honest with ourselves and celebrate ourselves. When you look at the history and the design of education, it didn't get built on the science of learning. The agrarian calendar had nothing to do with how our brains learn and retain information. So the reason we have 9-month academic years and summers off is not because the science of learning demonstrates that that's the best way to retain information, right? So we have patterns and traditions in education that are not necessarily there because of learning and because of students. When you look back at higher education, it was not originally designed for all of us. Most of us in this room would not have been allowed to sit in higher education chairs just a few hundred years ago for one reason or another. But here we are. And so if we're shifting education and higher education from the why of its original designs, and now we're saying, but higher education is the gateway through which all people can transform not only their lives, but generations after them, then we have to do it in a way that best makes it accessible and sets them up for success. And have a clicker that works. All right, she's speedy. Even on those heels, that's really impressive. I mean, I could talk from the paper, but nobody gets. Let me see. I will. Okay, the next chart shows you, whenever it comes up, where West Texas falls in comparison to the other regions of Texas. So nationally, there's this awareness that we are not on trajectory to have the right number of appropriately trained and higher education credentialed employees in our workforce. And those of us that plan on being in the workforce in the next 10, 15, 20, 40 years, that really matters. That has the ability to change the dynamic for this country. So we have to move now to be able to make sure that we have more students successfully navigating through higher education for the health of our country. West Texas is the lowest performing region of Texas in that area. One of the things that's important when we tell the story of Odessa College is giving context. We are not an elite area where everybody has always assumed higher education is their path to completion. We are the inverse. We are a collection of people that statistically should never, ever be on the national stage. We are a Hispanic serving institution. To cross that threshold, you have to have 25% of your student body identify as Hispanic. We have 60%. We are a 13 to 16% baccalaureate attainment rate, which is about 30 percentage points below the national average. We do not have a culture in our economy of college-going careers and college-going expectations because of the nature of the energy industry in that area. Oh, there you go. See us down there at the end, 29%. So we have a heavy lift in West Texas. And one way to approach a heavy lift, and some of you will have a heavier lift than some of your other sister institutions, right? Some of you are going to say, man, if I was at that campus, this would be a whole lot easier because the students all come from college-going families. They're middle income to upper income. Life is easy for them. Those campuses, my campus, we can't do it at my campus, right? That's one way you can approach having the heavier lift. Another is to take that crisis and use it as your catalyst and say, okay, well then we really have to buckle down because it is even more important for our students that we make progress. In 2010, Odessa College passed a $69 million bond to do a massive campus transformation, which has made a huge difference, and it would be the first building project in 30, 40 years for the campus. It was tremendously exciting. And in January, the news published that Odessa College was closing because state funding was being canceled. That was not accurate. However, imagine that conflict in 2 months' time, in 3 months' time, right? You can again go, man, this is just horrible, this is unfair, this is unjust, and we're going to have to slow down, we're going to have to back up. Or you can use that as your catalyst to say, and this is the approach Dr. Williams took, we are never, ever going to be questioned again as our viability, as our contribution, as our value and worth. So we're going to go all in, and we're going to show that we will never be in the discussion, we will never be in the question about our importance again. We've been around since 1946. I think there was supposed to be a video before this, wasn't there? Do you want me to go back and try it? I didn't touch it last time. Yep, that's what I thought. Oh, now we're going back and forth between them. Well, let me run those numbers for you while they figure out the technology. We have a 33,000 square... Never mind. Now you're going to wonder what we have 33,000 of.
Do you give everyone a chance? Do you help people regardless of the way they look, regardless of their income level? Do you say, come as you are, and we will help you, we will teach you, we will reach out to you, we will give you our very best? I knew how to study. I knew how to get things done. I knew how to show up. We have others that we must help, that we must serve and educate, who don't have the home life support that I might have had and you might have had. That doesn't make them less intelligent. That doesn't make them less capable. It makes them less accomplished at the moment, but we can always add to that.
I hope that you feel with every bit of your being that you are amazingly special people. You are not only making a difference for the students that are in your classroom, you are playing such an integral role in transforming what higher education is in this country. You are a model and you are a teacher for 1,199 other schools around this country.
Don't forget, we've had our ups and downs. But my commitment to you was about 5 years ago that from now on, no one's ever going to second guess Odessa College. Because we're going to be the best. We're going to sweep streets like no one else has ever swept them. We're going to do it so well that no one will ever question us again. And that's who we are at Odessa College. We're going to get even better.
And so with that energy comes amazing opportunities for transformation. And that's why we are so proud that you all are joining in that and that you do bring the laughter that it takes to approach these mountains and to do it together. This gives you a snapshot of who we are. Our service area is spread over vast expanses of not much. And that comes with its own challenges of how do we make sure to bring higher education and the opportunities all the way to the Mexican border to our students. The rest of this I think we talked about previously. And again, when you look at our demographic makeup, there is nothing about us that positions us to have it easy. Absolutely nothing. So one of the reasons that this is important for us to share over and over, if we can have the growth and the changes and the improvements for students, then anyone is able to. Everybody has to figure out their own nuances, but it is possible. This time I'm going to toss over to Kim.
So we call Valerie the faculty whisperer, and her replacement is scheduled to arrive the Monday after spring break. I am both grateful and terrified, but I have her on speed dial and have probably talked to her more in the last 9 days than I have talked to her in the prior 2 weeks. So congratulations, and you will certainly be missed. We're glad that she came along to share this information with you. So what I wanted to do this morning is share a little bit of the data so that you can learn more about our institution and some of the challenges and successes, or challenges and triumphs that we experience as an institution. You can see here where our enrollment has gone or come from in both the fall and the spring terms. One of the things that is unusual about this enrollment pattern, especially in the state of Texas, is when unemployment is high, enrollment increases. When unemployment is low, enrollment decreases. We have been able, through innovation and innovative programming, to buck that trend. You can see in 2014, which was a boom, considered a boom in West Texas for the oil and gas industry, unemployment was 3.9. We had a bust sort of in the middle, and then when we approached 2018, we were able to continue to increase enrollment with the same unemployment rate challenge. So just because your economy, just because your workforce dictates sometimes how enrollment trends go at your own institution, innovative programming and opportunities for all students will allow you to buck those trends. Oh, there we go. And this is an important slide for you all to see because the region didn't experience the same success that Odessa College did. So if we look at this slide, Texas in 2018, I don't know when this date was, or it's the enrollment growth from 2012 to 2016 or 17. This particular time in the state of Texas was really good, and then really bad, and then really good again. And so enrollment at community colleges changed a whole lot during that time. We were able to maintain enrollment increases, 28.7, across that same period of time. Texas experienced a decrease. One of the local community colleges within a 50-mile radius experienced a decrease, and another experienced a slight increase. So you can see if you continue to do the same things over and over again, you're going to experience the same thing. Enrollment declines or flat enrollment. And when we look at how that impacts degrees awarded, you can see in 2010 we were graduating 620 students throughout the academic year. And since we've implemented 8-week courses, the Drop Rate Improvement Program, other teaching and learning innovations that you'll learn about today, that has more than doubled. And so it's essential that you not only impact enrollment through innovation, but you also impact completion through innovation. There we go. And in the state of Texas, we are funded 3 different ways. We have contact hour reimbursement from the state. That amount used to be a significant part of our budget. It's not such a significant part of our budget any longer. Tuition and fees, and then we also have a tax base that we're able to pull funding from. The state of Texas, several years ago, decided that rather than just reimburse you on contact hour funding, which really is emphasizing enrollment, that you are going to be funded on success points. Are you completing students? Are they moving from dev ed into college level courses? Do you have transfer success? Do you have workforce placement success? And so all of those things are considered into your, or put into your success points for the state of Texas. This is only 10% of the state funding at this point in time, but you can see when we're compared with the state of Texas as well as the local community colleges within a 100-mile radius that we continue to do very, very well in this area. And we can't be successful if we're not bought into the process. And so every year we go out to our own employees and we ask them to invest in our students. One way we do that is through United Way. United Way plays an integral role in our community in connecting our students with resources to help them with their daily living expenses. It could be childcare. It could be some sort of emergency aid. It could be connecting them with food stamp assistance or housing assistance. And so every year we go out to our employees and ask them to support United Way. 97% of our employees are supporting the United Way campaign. And then in the spring, we go back out to those same employees and we say, we need you to invest in our students to help them pay for the cost of college. 96% of our employees participate in our Student Success Scholarship campaign. This is really important information when we have a foundation that's going out to the community and asking other people to support the college. We can say we're investing in our own students as well. And now I toss back to Valerie. He's going to talk to you a little bit about some innovation in instruction.
So the Drop Rate Improvement Program, initially referred to as DRIP, and then we decided to go back to the longer full reading. So the Drop Rate Improvement Program was started as a response to a study that was done in Odessa College, on Odessa College students who, as we started this presentation with, are just people, right? And the findings of that study, and we can talk more about that in the breakout sessions if you have questions, realized that the student connection with an instructor is the game changer. Now, those of you in education, which would be this room, this is not shocking. The thing is, how do you make that a cornerstone to transformation in instruction? And the table tent that you all have in your folders that identifies Ivy Tech's commitments is your answer. And we are so excited for you that you've gotten approval and that continues to move forward. The message is simple. Don't quit. It doesn't matter if you're struggling. It doesn't matter if it's hard. It doesn't matter if life is happening. Don't quit. We're there for you. We believe in you. And it's counterintuitive to the experience many of us had in the classroom. If you ever sat in a weed out class, we have a term for it. We call it a weed out class, right? Where the instructor is most proud as the seats vacate during the semester. Right? That's not how we can operate if our goal is to help more students be successful. And what we know is that that's not tough love. That doesn't mean that students walk out of the class and go, man, that humiliation was awesome. I want to do this more and subject myself more to this pain. It means the voices in their head are validated, that are already telling them they're not cut out for college and college isn't meant for them. And they go, yeah, they were right. Those voices were right. And I'm not going to do this college thing. They don't just leave the class and come back. They leave college. So the 4 commitments that we have asked faculty to make to their students every day, every course, every section, every student are the ones that you have in front of you. And the master of paradox, it's great that Stacy was talking about needing to make special accommodations for Ivy Tech's schedule. We as an institution have to do these things too. It's not something that we can simply say, hey y'all, you got to do this. Have fun. We're not going to do anything differently. So we have to be flexible. We have to think about the individuals impacted and use discretion and judgment to help them be most successful. And when you look at these things, there's nothing that violates the academic freedom that is very important in higher education. There is clear guidance as to how do I connect with my students? How do I engage? What does that mean? And this gives a framework for that. We must then, as an institution, provide the backup for that so that when a math instructor comes forward and says, you want me to know every single one of them by name? Do you have any idea how many students I have in every math class? How in the world am I supposed to get to know them all by name? We have to make sure that there's someone's available to answer those questions because they're real. This is a learning process for all of us. This is a learning opportunity. And so we have to provide that access, and it might be peers, it might be teaching and learning, it might be any number of resources, but we have to make sure that those are available for our team. The first-time faculty experience is a framework for all new faculty that come into the equation. So when you join Odessa College, it doesn't matter if this is your very first time teaching, as it was for Dr. Gonzalez, or if you've been teaching for a long time in K-12 or in higher education, but you're new to the Odessa College approach. There's mentoring, there's mandatory training on high engagement strategies, there's collaborative cohort conversations that happen together, there's feedback sessions on observations, and then more observation sessions and feedback sessions on those, so that we're very invested in the development of those new faculty. Because if we're going to hold high standards, we have to scaffold their learning. Just like when faculty need to hold the high standards in the classroom, they have to scaffold their students' learning. So the Drop Rate Improvement Program also requires that we give the full support to our students. So it triggers changes and awareness and learning that weren't originally part of the plan. When you start with those 4 commitments and you realize, okay, well, my students need to do their work in the evening and the library closes at 6. So we have students sitting in the parking lot trying to access the Wi-Fi from outside of a building to do their homework. Is that really the best that we can do for them? Or can we extend library hours until 11 o'clock and midnight on Sunday? Because when are all online assignments due? And so we rethink how we do what we do to meet the students because now we know them. Now we're listening to them. Now we're hearing about their individual experiences. And check it out. When you engage with your students in this way, when you do it this way, you have the opportunity to experience course completions at 96% year after year after year. And it's not just, well, just don't let them drop. Right? Texas implemented a law that said students are not allowed to drop more than 6 classes during their whole program. Right? So there was a prohibition against that. And that makes an impact, as you can see. But if you look at 2009 and 10, what starts to happen? It resorts moving back toward the norm, right? But with the Drop Rate Improvement Program and actually engaging and connecting in meaningful ways with the students, that continues down in a way that the rest of the Texas schools did not experience merely by the fact of that legislation being implemented. Oh, wow, I am not touching it. You caught all that, right? We just fast forwarded. Yeah, lunch. We're a break. Okay. All right.
That's good?
Yes. Nope. Hang on. Stop touching it.
Right there?
No, I'll get it. Okay, we're good.
Okay.
Staying flexible. Masters of paradox. Remember that? Right. What we didn't know when we first implemented the Drop Rate Improvement Program was if it was going to ever actually matter on success rates. Because it is not a great idea to go into a group of faculty and say, you have to pass more students. Right? No, not a good idea, ever. For really good reasons, not a good idea. But you have to engage with them. You have to know them. You have to work with them. You have to have highly structured courses that are built on how we learn. Totally legitimate, totally good approach. And then the question is, well, will that matter on how they then learn and how they perform, with changing nothing about the pedagogy, nothing about the text at that time, nothing about any other aspect? And the answer is unbelievably yes. Because they're there because they want to learn. They want the thing at the end of the day. They want the degree. They want the certificate. They may not want to sit in my English class. They never did. But they want that thing that they're there for. They want to be that career that they're after. They want to be the first in their family to graduate. So when we engage with them in a way that tells them how to do that and that we care about them and that we're here for them, they're able to succeed at remarkably higher rates. Diane is probably still recovering from the PTSD of this, but math is a really difficult area across the nation when it comes to student success rates and student drop rates. No, math is difficult, but it's not because math is a difficult topic. It is a difficult area to move the needle in that for lots of different and very complex reasons. Diane worked with the entire math department for a year and a half, probably felt like 10, on just developing engaging, student-centric approaches to the classroom and engaging student-centric approaches to evaluating how the students are learning and how are we going to do this thing. And through that work and pain and tears and yelling sometimes, the math department went from 50% to 80% of their students passing. What does every student need to graduate with a degree? Math. And so when you move a 30 percentage point difference in math or any single course area that's a requirement for degree completion, you open the floodgates to students who have access to completion. That's a tremendous amount of power in the hands of every single faculty member. It's a really important thing to remember. So this gives you a snapshot of the change, of the transformation that happened through all of this work. And there is every reason to believe you are on the same path. So when you see a 6 percentage point increase this early, you should celebrate. So next time they put up data that shows the results of the hard work that you're putting in, please cheer for yourselves. You deserve it. It's hard work. You have to celebrate in big ways. You saw the video of our Aspen announcement 2 years ago. We have to celebrate big because it is really hard work. So don't skip those opportunities on your respective campuses to celebrate individual accomplishments, to celebrate discipline transformations, to celebrate campus success. Party hard. Weekend College meets students around the needs that they have. So we started Friday night and Saturday classes for students whose work schedules did not allow them to access the traditional college schedule, but they also wanted face-to-face time in addition to that. Remembering that most community colleges serve a significant percentage of part-time students because they're balancing work and school. And the honest part is most of our full-time students are also full-time employees. And so we have to remember that they're trying to put these pieces together. So anything structurally that we can do to help put those pieces together in a more effective way for them is helpful. And what we find is that 8-week terms are one of the things that allows this to happen more effectively for students. OER, textbook costs are extremely prohibitive for students who are financially struggling, which is the vast majority of them, to access higher education. We have come to completion on 3 different degrees in the entire 42 semester credit hour core, or general education core. A student never has to buy a textbook. So $2 million of savings for students in a year through that initiative. There's a number of ways to go about this, but remembering that textbook cost is real. And please make sure to talk to Diane, Jennifer, and Oscar specifically about this in their breakout sessions because they have a lot of experience with it and how this connects to and reinforces learning outcomes. The library space is no longer a shush zone, because we have to think about what makes the space, makes the place where students want to be. Not, this is a really intimidating and threatening and uncomfortable place. I don't understand why students don't use our library. But instead, okay, they use Starbucks. They hang out at the bookstore. They go to these other places. They look at the Pixar offices. They look at the Google offices, and they go, I want beanbag chairs. I want flip-out chairs. Does it negatively impact their learning if they have comfortable and appealing furniture? No, it does not. And they're packed now. I was in the library. During my transition, I didn't have a computer, so I was actually using our library in that 11 o'clock hour of operations. And it's packed with students, which is phenomenal. The utilization has skyrocketed since we made this space what they want and the type of environment they want. And we will talk a lot about 8-week terms. I will say that we took out fast. We realized, learning in this process, fast scared the bejeebers out of our students. What they first thought was, I have to do all 15 semester credit hours in 8 weeks. Holy cow, why are you doing this to me? No, that wasn't it. But the communication that you all were talking about with and to students is really important. They need to understand what this is going to look like for them. Focused helps. So the ability to focus on only 2 classes or only 3 classes at a time, only have to get to know 2 instructors or 3 instructors at a time, is a tremendous help and comfort for them. Fast is scary. It happens. We just don't tell them about that on the front end. And when, that's the font. So that percentage sign is supposed to be up behind the 13. When things roll out, and this is not to Kim's error, the font's changed and the technology, she does amazing things. So let's give Kim a round of applause for surviving this. So when we rolled this out, we didn't know exactly the areas that it would positively impact, so we watched and we looked to see, okay, where does this make a difference? And we were floored at some of these places and where the change was so significant. The access to federal financial aid for part-time students was a big deal because suddenly, in taking 1 class at a time, they were taking 2 in a semester, and they were suddenly eligible for funding. Right? Huge game changer for them. The return to federal funds, you can talk to Ashley more about as well. But again, the financial support was an accidental, huge boon for students in this process. The course completion and success rates, we had already implemented the drop rate improvement program and moved the needle a good bit. So other schools that are making these changes simultaneously see a larger change in that because both happen at the same time. And the enrollment increase, I can't avoid going back to emphasize that chart that Kim showed you. Our pattern of enrollment growth is not mirrored anywhere else in the state. So it ties to these initiatives. So you can break your normal enrollment patterns when you do things in crazy, new, and awesome ways. So I love this chart, not going to lie, because if we roll out an initiative and it only helps the students that we've always helped, the students who are going to be just fine without us, who if we handed them a book and said, come back in 16 weeks and we'll test you, would probably pass, we aren't actually doing as much in that. But when we can create transformations that eliminate the performance gaps in historic demographics, that's huge. That's massive. And as you look down that data, notice that everyone is doing well. And the performance gaps cease to be a reality. Clicker challenges continue to be a reality, though. Because of the baccalaureate attainment rate in our area, it was very important to us to take advantage of new legislation. So actually, Oscar is the instructor and lead for our first bachelor's degree courses. So he is now teaching junior level courses in leadership and management so that students can complete a bachelor's degree. There's 2 that we now have approval for from our regional accreditor. The leadership and management, and then we also have a bachelor's in automation. So it's a lot of work to take that step to pursue that new level change, that new degree. But we realize that our community needs us to do everything we can, and this is one other thing that we could do. Jennifer gets total kudos for restarting, after many years in hiatus, our law enforcement academy. And so our community is struggling to fill vacancies in our law enforcement officers. And so, again, it was important for us to help support that aspect of our community. We also have developed an in-house truck driving academy, a very consuming on the front end. So we had to figure out, how do we do this? How do we get this? And because of the investment that Kim had talked about with United Way, with students, because we have done for and with our community for the years, when we went to them and said, so we'd like $8 million from the Economic Development Corps, and one of the things that we would like to do with that is to start up a truck driving academy, they said yes. So it comes back when we give. At this time, I hand back to Kim.
And I'm going to stay closer to the computers, thinking that perhaps that will help our clicker issues. It's not isolated to Indiana. We have the same exact problems in Odessa. So if anybody can create new clicker technology, I'm sure that you will have a windfall. When we talk about student services at Odessa College, one of the things that's really important to me is that we continue to challenge our students in the classroom and not in our processes. A lot of the things that we do as student services professionals is, one, allow students to procrastinate, right? Give them the opportunity to plan to procrastinate till the week before classes to register for classes. And we also give them the green light, but lots of red tape. And so as we made these transitions with Drop Rate Improvement Program, Green Light Red Tape is not mine. It's a book published from community colleges out of California. So if you tweet that, you can give them a shout out, not me. But it's a great analogy. So as we began to provide support and service around the innovation and instruction, those were the things that we had to keep in mind. As student services professionals, we often assume that students have a linear pathway from being a prospective student to being a graduate, right? Because that's the experience that we had in higher ed. But at community colleges, the reality is this is what it looks like for our students. A green light, but lots of red tape. If you were traveling, this is what that might look like. So it's important as student services professionals to make sure that you're not giving your students false hope and then providing some sort of barrier like you see here. The other thing that we talk a lot about is making sure students are in class, not in line on the first class day. So we had to back up a lot of our processes and procedures and dates and deadlines to ensure that students weren't waiting in line to pay for class on the first class day. Our payment deadline now for fall term is July 15th. In the past, our payment deadline would be 12 days into the first semester, so that we had the maximum amount of time to get students registered and paid and impact enrollment. There you go. So after, just so you know the logistics of it, after July 15th, you have to, if you register, you have to make payment arrangements. Okay, we won't let you extend your payment deadline any longer. You have to make payment arrangements. That might be paying $30 to enter into a zero down installment plan. That may be completing a financial aid application. That may be paying your tuition and fees in full. The other thing that happened about 6 years ago is we eliminated late registration. You cannot register for a class. You cannot register for a class if the class is already started. So what that means, if it's the first day of the semester and you come in because you've decided all of a sudden I'm going to go to school and get a degree, then if it's 9 o'clock and you want to register for a class that began at 8 a.m., you can't register for that one. But let me tell you what, in the Pathways Advising Center, they'll tell you there's that same class that starts at 11. It hasn't started yet. You're not late. I can register you for that class. So we've sort of made our own definition for no more late registration. We still give students a lot of flexibility and latitude, but we hold them accountable. You have to be registered for the class before it starts. The one really great thing about the transition to 8-week terms is students aren't having to come into our offices on the second week in September and wait 14 weeks to start in the spring semester. We can get them started when Fall 2 begins in October. That's a really important thing for our students because a lot of things happen in their lives in that 16 weeks, and they may not have the opportunity to go to school. So just as they're earning credit and banking credit much more quickly, they're allowed to on-ramp into an educational pathway much more quickly as well. We have the Pathways Advising Center. Pathways is a big advising movement in the state of Texas and across the nation. So we renamed our advising center Pathways Advising Center. I have some concern that we don't call things what they are. So we still call it the Advising Center so students know where they're going and where they need to be. It's adapted to the PAC, and they're starting to learn that's where you go if you need support and assistance with the registration. We talk about our 30,000-foot view of the pathway. We have a responsibility to connect with students, get them prepared for college. That may be through traditional recruitment efforts, or it could be through really formalized and intentional dual credit programming. And then we need to make sure that our students are engaged. You guys know that engaged students are successful students. And as our students are progressing through their degree pathway, we need to make sure that we check in and check up on these students to make sure that they're not falling through the cracks. We know that momentum is sometimes an issue for community college students. When you live in West Texas and the economy is booming, momentum's not your only challenge. Jobs that are paying really, really excellent wages for just a high school diploma is your other challenge. And then we have a responsibility to help them complete. One of the things that we've done at Odessa College is eliminate the need for students to complete an application for graduation. They no longer tell us they're ready to graduate. We're telling them you're ready to graduate. Through this process, we had to create what we call a linear pathway to degree completion. And so as we transitioned from 16-week terms to 8-week terms, we changed what our degree audit looks like. It's no longer by discipline. You have to take math courses, science courses, humanities. It's actually in the order that we suggest you take the courses. So we have design for completion teams that include an advisor, a success coach, and a faculty member that talk about each of their programs and what students should take first, second, third, fourth. So they are given a linear pathway that tells them your first term, Fall 1, you take Strategies for Success, which is our Learning Frameworks course. And then if you're pursuing criminal justice, the criminal justice faculty wants you to take the next 2 classes. And this is also designed to ensure they have stackable credentials, so they get a certificate before the degree. Okay? So 1 through 20. That's really easy for students to understand. If for some reason they stop out, they start with Course 5. Or Course 6, or Course 19. This is an ongoing conversation because we have to talk about things like rigor and relevance. Do you put students into 2 math courses during Fall 1, or Fall 2, or Spring 1, or Spring 2? The answer is no. And so it takes a village to make sure that we're developing a linear pathway that is right for our students. Now that we've added the BASS program, there is 21 courses 21 through 40 that get the students the 120 hours that they actually need. This has been a really great change for us, and students really appreciate the ability to say, I stopped at Course 4 and now move on to Course 5. The other thing that we do in this process is let students know that if you want to accelerate, you can take a course during one of the flex terms. That might be midwinter, that may be Maymester, or that may be the summer. So all of our pathways are designed to get students to and through the processes in their classes into a degree. So this has been developed for every type of student that enrolls at our institution. This happens to be a first-time, full-time student, and the prescribed course taking patterns for them. 2 courses, fall 1, fall 2, 2 courses, spring 1, spring 2, 2 flex courses, rinse and repeat, and you will complete your 60 semester credit hours in 2 years. There's one of these for dual credit students, there's one of these for part-time students, and so on. We offer the first class free at Odessa College. Just because we live in a really prosperous community doesn't mean that students can actually pay for college. They don't qualify for financial aid, but they cannot afford to go to college. So what this allows us to do is get a student in to the system and start talking about affordability and planning for paying for your degree. Since we've implemented this particular program, we've also implemented the first 6 free for our dual credit students. Our dual credit courses are not free. Students are having to pay a reduced amount, and what we were finding is that the students who could most benefit from dual credit weren't taking it because cost was prohibitive. We also have an academic progress scholarship to address some of the momentum issues I spoke about earlier. You get a 10% tuition scholarship upon completion of 30 semester credit hours and a 20% upon completion of 45 semester credit hours. With all of these discounts across your linear pathway, our tuition is 12.4% lower than the state average. So not everybody is prepared to do this, right? And I know your finance guy is celebrating his birthday someplace else today, and it's not at a basketball game, I learned yesterday. He kept mentioning all these basketball schools, and I'm like, and they have a basketball team. He's like, I wouldn't know. I'm like, they do. They do. And do they play tonight? Because we'll go. We actually, when we implemented these two initiatives, we made a slight adjustment in our tuition to offset the investment in these programs. So as you guys begin to think of innovative things to do on your campus, although these programs provide over $1 million in scholarship benefits to students a year, we're not necessarily losing that revenue. We accommodated that through tuition increases. Speaking of athletics, we are the Odessa College Wranglers, and the reason that I share this with you is because 8-week courses has made a real impact on student-athlete success and completion. One of the things that 8-week courses has allowed our student athletes to do is sort of bank their courses based on when their season is. So you have other you may not have athletics in your on your campuses, but you have other programs and other students that may need to offset their schedule to meet a workplace demand. What if you are working with students who are in the retail industry and they really need to work 80 hours a week or 60 hours a week during the Christmas holiday? Well, they may choose to take 3 courses, fall 1, and only 1 course in fall 2. So having 8 weeks really helps those students who are working balance a schedule that makes the most sense for either work or maybe even their family. We also have a student engagement program called Drive to Success, and this is just a promotional video, and so I'll talk over it. But engaged students are successful students. We know that community college students typically go from the parking lot to the classroom to the parking lot. So how do we incentivize engagement on our campus? We have to reward it, right? So every time our students do the right thing on our campus, whether it's attending an event or an activity, going to the tutoring sessions, doing something that is over and above and beyond in the classroom, they get what we call Drive to Success points. It's app-driven, and all of those points are put into an electronic hopper at the end of the year, and their names are drawn, 5 finalists who are eligible to win a brand new Ford Mustang. And so you would be surprised how many students are really interested in accumulating points because they want to win the car. We have also used this to our advantage to increase FAFSA completion on our campus and have students do things that we need them to do when we need them to do them. So, for example, if you complete the FAFSA during the academic year and before we do the drawing, you get 10 Drive to Success points. So it's a really great way to incentivize and motivate students. We have given away 11 cars. We have given away cars to dual credit students. That's a little bit of a logistic challenge when they don't have a driver's license, but you'd be amazed. This young man won the brand new car on a Tuesday, didn't have his driver's license. By Friday, he had his driver's license and a prom date and a new car. We couldn't do what we do without partnerships in the community, not only with our educational partners in K through 12, but also with community and workforce partners. And so Valerie's going to share some information about the importance of that in this transition.
And I'm going to move through this part relatively quickly because I really want to make sure Kim has time to talk about the last part of this morning's presentation. So our partnerships are corporate partners. Our partnerships are local government partners and agency partners. They're also our ISD, or our K-12 system. And all of those partnerships help make these things possible. Some of it requires the collaboration. Some of it is their employees who are our students, and some of it is funding. Did I miss a video? Probably. Kim said I can talk over this. This is a video talking about the Fab Lab. It's a great example of the power of partnerships. The startup of a Fab Lab or a maker space, as you may have heard them called, can cost, and ours cost, upwards of $1 million. Maybe Ivy Tech has that laying around in its budget, and that's not here, so we can just assume that that's the case. But most of us don't, right? So it takes outside partnerships to bring possibilities that we otherwise can't within our own budgets afford. And the makerspace, or the Fab Lab, was made possible because of our partnership with Chevron. And our partnership with Chevron was so strong because when they came to us years before and said, we have a tremendous need in the workforce for technicians who can do instrumentation, who can do automation, you build the curriculum, will you be the training provider for that? We said yes. And so that yes, many years ago, has developed an extremely strong instrumentation program and has led to the automation program that we now have at the bachelor's level. And that partnership made that maker space possible so that students have access to 3D printers, lathes, all kinds of high-tech, computer-driven maker technology that now our engineering program students are able to access and utilize. Our math students can utilize for project-based learning, and it's able to be a catalyst space for a lot of different initiatives. We made 5 commitments, I have to do my math right, 5 commitments to our school district as part of recognizing that our school district has struggles due to the area as well. And so we made commitments to them to help collectively improve the educational attainment for our community. One of which was giving 1,000 presentations to our district partners, the students, the employees. We do entire invasions where we take over an entire elementary school for the day and do all kinds of different things with them, which has been a lot of fun. We exceeded 1,000 presentations and hit, I think, 1,300 plus that year, and so we upped it to 1,500 this year and bringing in corporate partners, and that's been a great way to connect with our hospitals and bringing them in for that. We also added a 6th commitment, which is the first 6 hours free that Kim mentioned earlier. This is one of our invasions of the elementary school. And so when you think about creating a college-going culture with kindergartners, you have to think differently about it. And you bring in your students to help with the elementary students. You bring in your faculty. You bring in your staff. The entire Odessa College team comes together. And the best thing about the fire truck, apparently, is the box where the hose is at the back. They were getting the tour, and they opened the box, and like, whoa, there's a hose in there. For some reason, that was phenomenal. You bring pizza. It's great. What it does is let every kindergartner, every first grader, every second grader know, where are you going to go to school? How am I going to go to college? Where are you going to go? I want to go to OC. It becomes a thing that they may not ever have been told, that may not be part of the conversations that happen at home. They go home and go, hey, OC came through, and we did this, and they had pizza, and we did this. It becomes a conversation that happens in families. The Sewell Auto Tech Center is made possible by partnership with the same folks that have been 11 years working with us in Drive to Success program. It includes helping our athletic facilities and tremendous expansion ongoing in those areas. And at this point, I want to make sure that Kim has this time to talk about the need.
You've actually done pretty well on the timing for you being
For me,
10
yes.
hours away while I was trying to do this. One of the things that has become more prominent in higher education conversations lately is that our students are dealing with some really challenging poverty issues. And our campus is no exception. Yes, it is a very prosperous community, but it's not a very stable community. And so we need to acknowledge that our students have issues. We all have issues. Students have challenges. And that we need to mobilize our campus and our employees to better support our students. Now that we know their names, conversations about what they're needing become so much easier as we continue to help students get to and through our pathways. This is what we know about Odessa College students. You're probably in the same boat in many of your own communities. 1 in 4 of our students have children, so they're struggling most likely with child care issues. I moved to Odessa at a time when it was an oil boom. I could not find a place to put my children in after-school child care. And when I did find a place, I was paying over $200 a week for child care for a 7- and 9-year-old. It is cost prohibitive and it is unavailable. Many of our students are what we consider food insecure. They don't know where their next meal is coming from. This is a big deal. When you're hungry, it's hard to concentrate. And so is it time for us to consider putting things like a food pantry on our campus? Or is it time for us to consider adding a social worker to the student services org chart so that she or he can connect those students with community resources? Many of our students are housing insecure, and they're housing insecure because it costs $1,500 to rent a 1-bedroom apartment, if you can find it. And so our students are housing insecure. Our faculty and staff are housing insecure as well. 14% of our students are struggling with homelessness. Through Ashley's leadership, Financial Aid conducted a survey of our students using a model and support and assistance from the Trellis Foundation. And this is what we found out about our students. It reaffirmed some of the things that we already knew. 55% are supporting their families somehow financially. So when you are asking them to pay for school, they're having to balance an investment in their education with support of their family. And we also know that students, 60% of them say that they would have trouble getting $500 in cash or credit to meet an unexpected need within the next month. So if your students' cars break down, it's hard for them to get to class, right? And the expense makes it almost impossible to invest in education for the next term. This is one of the really critical reasons that 8-week courses is important to our students, because you can bank credit or accumulate credit or earn credit much more quickly than you can in a 16-week term. That broken down car, that flat tire, those child care issues are much easier to navigate when you know you only have 4 weeks to go instead of 8 weeks to go. And so from a student services lens, from a social services perspective, it has been a game changer for our students. More importantly, a game changer for our part-time students who are now accessing aid. They're taking 2 classes instead of 1 class, and they're completing their degree at a rate that is higher than full-time students across the state of Texas. our students, as you know, are experiencing food insecurity, but they're not accessing food assistance. Again, what is our responsibility in connecting them with community resources or providing those resources on campus? We also know, and this is through some of Sarah Goldrick-Rabb's work out of Temple University, that students enduring poverty spend as much time on college as traditional students, but more time working and less time sleeping. So if you're working and sleeping, it makes concentrating in class or getting to class more difficult for students enduring poverty. And without their basic needs met, students are ashamed, they're alone, they're unable to focus on learning, and they're often hopeless. So using those 4 commitments that Valerie talked about is really important for students to share their hopelessness with you so that you can connect them with resources available on your campus or in your community. We know as student services professionals that we get to see students 2 or 3 or 4 times a year, but those folks in the classrooms are seeing them every single day. So giving faculty the tools and the resources or a toolbox to, 1, engage with students appropriately, 2, connect them to resources through really solid relationships in student services and instruction is really critical to them completing their pathway. And I believe it's time for a break, but we have done such a good time on timing. It looks like we have a few minutes for questions. Both Valerie and I'd be glad to answer. The breakout sessions that you will visit today are going to let you dive deep on some of the things that you're interested in, whether it's financial aid, whether it's teaching and learning, whether it is how to write a textbook for your new baccalaureate class. I learned that Oscar wrote our textbook for the Bass Leadership Program, and he's not assessing the fee that we need him to assess, so I'll take care of that. He's like, but I wrote it. I'm like, I don't care. We need $20. I did. You learn a lot about your colleagues when you travel, so. Any questions?
Burning questions.
Okay, we'll start here at this table.
With the linear pathway model that you put up there, if a student's not able to do, I think you called it a flex schedule or like a Maymester, when they return that following semester, will that course be available? Will it be offered for them?
So the question, I guess you guys heard the question, right? Will the course be available if they aren't able to accelerate through midwinter, flex term, or summer session? Yes. We spend a whole lot of time having conversations about what the schedule looks like and does it support all students. We also have made the decision and have agreed upon if a student gets into their 18, 19, 20th course and for some reason that course isn't offered, we'll set up a self-study for them because we made a commitment to get them to and through the pathway, and we will offer the course. We do sometimes have to skip to number 5 just because the course is full or maybe it isn't being offered that semester, but we have, again, used the Masters of Paradox in the scheduling and in the advising and registration.
So my question is, and we've heard so much about this is not compressing 16 weeks into 8, and that takes some training, and faculty, we really want that training. Have you developed some best practices? I'm sure you have because you're smiling, for that kind of, and maybe it's not training, but that pedagogical help for faculty that want to maintain the rigor, that want to cover the content and do it in 8 weeks efficiently?
That is an excellent segue for when we come back from the break. And a lot of the time that we're going to be able to talk today. Yeah, there you go. Well done. Absolutely. The first premise, when you go back to the we aren't doing enough for enough people in higher education, if we start with our honest reflection of, do I believe that I have perfected my class and it will never, ever, ever get better than what I have this semester? No, everything's always able to improve. Then we say, okay, well, if I'm going to switch the time for it, it's a great opportunity to think holistically about the course. And where do I start with that? Oh, I start with my textbook. I pick up my book. It has 16 chapters. How convenient. And that's what I need to do. Except no. What we start with is our learning outcomes. Start with the end in mind. What is it that I need students to learn by the end of this course? and then how am I going to scaffold the learning experiences to get there. And so we will spend a good bit of time in the next part, as well as the breakout session, talking about what those approaches are. But it's a really, really important time to take the time to reflect on how do I best build a course that accomplishes those learning outcomes, and then you pace the learning to happen frequently and recurrently during those 8 weeks. And so it's a really powerful pedagogical transformation tool when done in the right way. And collaboratively, it's also a great time for faculty to learn from other faculty outside of their discipline. How did you do this thing? How did you get them to read outside of the classroom? How did you get them to do their papers with better writing proficiency? How did you get these things done? So it really encourages collaboration. Other questions?
Yes. Since your unemployment rate is low at Odessa, what percentage of students are working that attend the college?
Ashley knows this better than I do.
Ashley knows.
60% of our students are working. 60% of our students work. So the majority of them are working.
60% was that answer. Other questions? Yes, sir.
Yeah, I had a quick question. Looks like you're heavily incentivizing students to take certain actions. Do you have any concerns that there could be long-run negative unintended consequences to that?
To motivating good behavior?
To motivate, well, it's providing an extrinsic benefit rather than getting them to have the intrinsic value of doing things. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Is there a particular aspect that triggers concern? Because it'll probably be more effective for me to answer to specifics than in generalities. Is there a specific part of the incentivizing that you have a concern about?
My concern is that and it's the same way with children, that when you provide incentives, then it has to keep upping. And when they get out in the workforce, are they going to expect their employers to have similar things in the workplace? Do you have to keep raising them? That sort of thing.
I don't think your mic's on.
My short answer would be who cares, right? Our job is to get them to and through the pathway. My long answer would be most students don't know they're getting those incentives as they're going through the program. Most students, they do know they're getting the first class free. That one they caught on to. They don't know they're getting an academic progress scholarship discount. Most of them don't know that we're giving them drive to success points throughout the year just for registering for 6 hours or going to the tutoring center. So I don't think we're overexposing them to rewards.
So they don't know when they're getting a benefit, is what I'm saying?
I would say the majority of students don't. Those that live on campus and are highly engaged students anyway, the same ones that we all knew when we were in college, right? They know because they're trying to get the most drive to success points, and they're trying to do things that will change their experience on campus. But the average student that has a child and that's working full-time is really not aware of those things. The one other thing that they're not totally aware of, that we have to do a better job of educating them on, is that they don't know that they're benefiting from over $1 million in savings from textbooks. Because if you have come from K through 12, and this is your first year at Odessa College, you're not experiencing the $600 textbook cost that the student before you experienced. So you just think that's how it is, right?
The other kind of framing on that, if what we were doing was saying, okay, you need to sit still, don't work at all, and we're going to hand you a bunch of stuff, then I would have that concern. But what, in fact, is the reality is we've asked them to climb Mount Everest, and you can help me carry my pack when I'm tired. And so, yes, we are providing them with those supports, but they're having to climb Mount Everest still. And so what we see is that the extrinsic and intrinsic then work in conjunction together.
And
No.
Absolutely.
And remember that we have only a 13 to 16% baccalaureate attainment rate in our region, so they're not getting any motivation at home. They don't have anyone at home that's been through this experience to motivate them to continue their education.
Yes.
Have you gotten any feedback from the employer partners on the graduates that you're producing in regard to retaining the learning from the 16-week to the 18-week model?
Yes, two different answers to that question. One is a lot of our programs have external licensing exams, and those have all gone up. And so in our licensing exams, the norm is in the 90s to 100% pass rates across all of the various disciplines that have external licensing exams. Our employers are very happy with graduates. One illustration of that is that Chevron, for example, fast tracks all OC graduates because they know the quality of technical training that they've earned. Our universities are seeing that the transfer students going into, so University of Texas Permian Basin is our largest receiving university, and those students are outperforming the native students who started there as freshmen. They're passing 80% of their junior level courses. So all of our external metrics are saying that the students both in the workplace and in transfer are performing at least as.
And let them know, hey, we look different, and it may be a better different for you and your specific situation. On behalf of Valerie and I'd like to thank each of you for letting us tell our story. There's a lot of information, a lot to share. We will be leaving the PowerPoint, including the videos, with Corey and Stacy, so you're welcome to access that information. My other suggestion to you all would be to go to our website, odessa.edu, and in the search bar, type in Road to Aspen. It has a lot of deliverables on that particular web page that we used during our Aspen application and site visit. Everything from an org chart to some additional data about 8-week terms and drop rate improvement program and things that you can easily share with your own colleagues. So thank you very, very much, and we will take a break. Do you have instructions for the break?
So during our break, the drink station is still available in the back. Restrooms are out the doors in either direction. They're sort of tucked in little alcoves. And we will start back here right at 10:45. Okay, so 10 minutes.
This is what cool people do. And then everybody else looks around and realizes, hands are in the air, I'm on the outside, I want to be cool too. Awesome. Good to have you all back again. A couple quick things that surfaced from our informal conversations at the break. One, I do want to clarify, we have some dorms on campus. We really wish we had more, but we only have 237 beds. So that housing situation that we talk about impacts the other 7,800. That's not the correct math, but it's close. So while we do have dorms, the vast majority of those beds actually go to our athletes, many of whom come from international. So the vast majority, 99% of our students, do not have the benefit of a residential experience. And also, we failed to share, we believe so much in the effectiveness of reinforcing positive behaviors that we are 3 years into OC All In, which is a rewards incentive program for employees doing good things. And we invest over $100,000 in our employees doing good things. And so they have the ability to earn gift cards. We have a celebration every 8 weeks for the people who have engaged in campus activities at a certain point. At this point in time, over 90% of all employees meet those thresholds. And so they're coming to student games, they're coming to plays that students put on, they're coming to student productions and events. They're engaging in the campus community, and amazingly similar to students, it creates that culture of investment. And they feel valued because of the program rewards and fun that they get to engage in as well. So we get to spend a little bit of time with you talking about the 8-week course implementation. And I will be leaving the stage shortly. I want to set a little bit of framework pieces. And then it is my tremendous honor to bring 2 of our deans forward to talk about the experiences. And remember, while they are currently in dean and senior dean roles, they are and have been in the classroom. They've moved up through the ranks of leadership at the college. They really are able to speak from perspectives of the transformation at the institution as well as where we are today. So we talked a little bit about the teaching and learning framework and the background. This really is instrumental. When you make a change that impacts learning or the classroom or course length and duration, if it comes from a place that encourages and reinforces sound learning practices, faculty are way more likely to invest the time and energy in that change. Because to be a teacher means you want your students to be successful. And so a process by which we learn together how to do that even better is desirable, is wanted. That doesn't mean it's easy. It just means it's meaningful. We have an entire arm, OC Global, that supports online learning. One of the things that I want you to remember when you think about the online learning platform, we've only been doing this thing for 10, 15, not quite 20 years. So it's a very new platform in the grand scheme of learning for how do we engage and effectively teach in the online learning environment. So really being willing to think differently and seek out this aspect of professional development and support as instructors are trying new things in the online or hybrid platform is really important. Where do you want me to go then? To wait? And we will wait because we didn't get other ones. Let me pick up my paper real quick because part of it I can probably talk through. Thanks. Yep. Okay. So going backwards then, when we first were considering this transition to 8-week terms, we were doing pretty well. We had implemented the drop rate improvement program. We had begun the campus transformation project. We had started Drive to Success. We were doing well. Our data was showing that students were succeeding at higher rates, students were staying at higher rates, enrollment was doing the right things, not necessarily at a skyrocketing rate, but at a healthy rate. Students were graduating, we were fixing those processes. So normal decision making would have been, don't rock the boat, we're doing okay. If we do something drastic, we could undo the whole thing. And that's a real fear. We worked through that in thinking about, well, why would we consider something like 8-week terms? And we realized that faculty, students, our own experiences for decades, understands burnout. When you think about week 10 and 12 and 14, how exhausted both students and faculty are. Because it's 4 months is a long time to stay with a thing. And there's a lot then that's piling up in that window of time. And a lot of life, 3 months of life has happened outside of the work and school environment. And so could we do something that got in front of that window of time? Could we avoid that overwhelm thing? And with the drop rate improvement program, when you recognize from the data, I'm just going to point to him for data from now on. When you recognize from the data that engagement and knowing each student makes a difference in their success, wouldn't it be helpful if you had half as many students to get to know in that moment in time? And conversely, it makes sense then that it's helpful for the student to only have to know one set of deadlines, one set of teachers, one set or two sets if they're full-time, a smaller number of courses and everything that means to focus on at that point in time. Aha, we got it. Do I have a clicker? Because I walked away from it. Thanks. We also know that we are not the first people on the planet to do 8 weeks. And actually, we had courses going on in 8 weeks. In summers, we had 4 week. We actually had 3 week. I'm not as big a fan of the 3 weeks, but 4 weeks where you do one class. This wasn't an unheard of thing. We also know that schools have operated on quarter systems. There's all kinds of duration lengths, and nobody has ever come back and said, summer is educational malfeasance. We are doing wrong by all students who take summer classes, right? And additionally, many of us have taken graduate programs while we work in 8-week frameworks because those universities have recognized that in order to make this most accessible for our working adult students, 8 weeks helps. That's what we're doing in community colleges, is serving working adult students for the vast majority. And so it made sense framework-wise and conceptually. Additionally, and Kim made reference to this earlier, it created additional on-ramp opportunities. So if it's a horrible idea for students to start a class late after it's already been going on, it doesn't feel great to say, I am so excited that you got up the courage to come and you've walked through these doors and you've faced all of these fears and you've talked yourself out of all of the negative headspace. We will be really excited to see you in 5 months. That's tough. That's tough. But to say, we'll see you in 5 weeks, and here's the things that you can do to prepare for that, much better, much better. No, we aren't on the quarter system. Financial aid discussions really drive. It is important that that we are still on a semester, that we still have these terms, which we had to figure out what we're going to call these things, these terms within the framework of a semester. So a lot of our answers and logistics come back to, well, we're still advising by the semester. We still do housing by the semester. We still have financial aid by the semester. We still plan by the semester. And each semester has 2 compartments, has 2 terms. Where we were, and this is something I'm navigating with my new institution now, with class lengths and durations all over the place, right? I was talking with our curriculum designer at Lone Star, and we have 20 different term lengths. Wow, that's a lot. So We have term lengths all over the place for various reasons, and they generally have evolved reactively to new things. Perhaps one of our lessons learned from having this as a reality of where most institutions are is that there's inherent challenges with 16 weeks because we have to come up with all the Band-Aids. So when you have 8 weeks, you have far fewer exceptions that become necessary because the 8-week terms become the solution to problems that we had varying different Band-Aids on before. If this is where you are, then it's important to remember nobody had ever told you you may not teach in anything but 16 weeks, right? So when this is where you're going, that doesn't mean there can't be some exceptions. So, for example, if clinical timing necessitates utilizing the full 16 weeks because that's the frequency of availability our hospital partners can have, then it makes sense for that class to happen over 16 weeks. Okay? So, as you can see, the vast majority, we operate and are built on 8-week terms, and there are healthy, reasonable exceptions to that. Procedurally, what we did initially was to have that committee that we put together of faculty across all the disciplines as well as staff representation across the college to review, on the course aspect, it was the faculty review to justify a request to keep a course in 16 weeks. And the only rule, you can't say it's too hard. But there are logistical reasons that it makes sense. Very few ended up for us falling into that framework, but it's an important context to keep in mind. These programs already had experience in 8-week terms, running 8-week sections or 8-week programs, depending on the area. So finding your rock stars, finding the folks that are ahead of others already in working through these logistics gives you a professional development or a teaching and learning pool of experts to then utilize in helping others figure out how we come through these things. It was a great resource that OC had, that the A&P faculty had already had some experience in this realm and jumped in it, and then have been able to become advocates for the other sciences and faculty across not only all disciplines, but now nationally. Now I get to give Diane her slides so that she can talk. So again, Dr. Carrasco-Jaques, recently married, congratulations, Diane, has been with the institution for 21 years. And so she has seen the transformation from all different positions at the institution and has been the one who really deserves the kudos for developing teaching and learning into what it has become at Odessa College. Dr. Carrasco-Jaques.
Thank you. Thank you, Valerie. All right. In your folders. Oh, wait. First of all, good morning. How's everybody doing? Let's look alive. In your folders, there's a cardstock paper. Please take that out. And hopefully you have a writing utensil. And what I want you to do is fold it hot dog style, meaning the blank part should be able to face this horizontally. Hot dog, hamburger. Hot dog is the long, hamburger is the other way. Okay, so what I would like you to do, please, to help me, because I don't know who you are, I would like for you to put your name really big in the middle, and then on one side over here by the emblem, I would like you to put what department you're with for the college, and then on the other side, I would like for you to write down what superhero you most identify with. My colleagues wanted to say what Star Wars character, and I said, not everybody has seen Star Wars. You don't know that? You don't know people's business? So, if you take just a couple of minutes, we don't have a lot of time. So middle of the thing, put your name really big. One side, what your role is with the college. The other side, what superhero you most identify with. Okay. You should be done right about now. All right, please make sure you put your tent in front of you so whoever's standing up here speaking can see. Okay. All right. I think I got most people back. Thank you. By the way, that's just a strategy I like to use so that I'm not yelling at people to get their attention. It's just quite simple. This tent strategy is something to help with commitment number 1, learning people's names, because it feels different when I come up to you, Joe, and say, oh, you identify with Green Lantern. Nice. How was your weekend this past weekend? It's almost time for the new weekend. How was it?
It was a good weekend. Great.
All right, good. Feels different. Earlier, some of you were already here. I was going around greeting you, saying I was so happy for you to be here. Those are little things that you want to do to help people feel comfortable and connected, not just with your students, but with each other. If you have faculty development sessions, you have meetings, the more you do these types of things, the more it gets ingrained and becomes part of what you do. So this is you saw this earlier, the teaching and learning. So one of the most important things I think that it's because it's special to my heart, when we made the transition to 8 weeks was making sure that our faculty had the appropriate tools and resources to implement 8 weeks. And the Teaching and Learning Division was able to do that. Now, when Valerie said, okay, we're going to create this division, in my mind, I'm like, yeah, but it's just me. But then I started thinking, yeah, but then this person does this in their class, this person does this. I have a team of people who are already doing innovative approaches in the classroom. So it was easy really to identify. Some of you are administrators in here right now thinking who those people might be on your team. And then who are my faculty in here? Raise them high. Who are the faculty? Yes. Some of you are already probably doing engaging in innovative things. So, or maybe you know a colleague who, you really get a lot of ideas from them. Do some checking to figure out how you can build a team. Oops. Oh, I did that right. Okay, so you saw this earlier. We do have a department that's dedicated to helping faculty with course design. And so earlier we were talking about insecurities that our students have. They may not be able to make it to class because their car broke down that morning, and so they're stuck at home. What are they going to do if they don't have access to the material? Even if you're teaching a face-to-face class, your material should be available 24/7 because you never know when students are going to have things come up that are out of their control. And the learning can continue for them because they have access to it online. And so our OC Global Department has helped faculty develop best practices for hybrid instruction, online instruction, and really every class that we have on our campus has a learning management system attached to it. We use Blackboard. And so students have access to their grades, they have access to the syllabus, and now more and more we're getting more faculty creating lectures to place online, Because think about Generation Z and even millennials. Where's the first place they go when they don't understand something? They're going to go Google it. They're going to go to YouTube. Actually, Generation Z goes to YouTube over Google. That's what the research says. So if you can develop some quick 5-minute, 10-minute videos to help keep your students with the resources they need for their class. That's very important. So one of also the main things that we did is develop the awareness that every course that you teach has student learning outcomes. I don't know how it is here, but in Texas, we do have a common course numbering system. There are standard outcomes developed for every course in our academic course guide manual, and then our WECM is for our CTWE courses. Do you have something similar to that, Kelly? Okay. So, no, that's fine. It's okay. Because if you don't already have that standardized, who's to say you can't do that for yourselves, right? What that's going to take is for people to really start talking about, well, what do I teach in my class? What does my colleague teach in their class? And so you want to come together as a group and start having conversations about what the important outcomes are in your class. Don't let your textbook dictate what your class should cover. I realize textbooks are written by faculty. That's awesome. But that's your class. This is your school, your department, your classes. Empower yourselves by coming together as a group. All the math 13, 14 college algebra faculty come together. Sit down and have an honest conversation about what the important items are that need to be covered in that class. Who is your audience? Where are your students going? Why do they have to have math 13, 14? Are they engineering majors? Are they just taking it as part of their degree plan? What is it about the course that the students need to know? Because covering all the chapters in a textbook really doesn't mean that, oh, I've taught my students college algebra. The learning, we all know, happens outside of the classroom. It really does. And so, again, back to the online lectures, some of the things that we've been able to do, and I'm not going to have you do this, but I just wanted you to see, to start thinking about how you engage with your course outcomes as faculty. Have you ever thought about what they are? Did you make up your own? Does your colleague have their own? These are things that you want to think about. And this is just you could do a 2-minute quick write to really sit down at the beginning of class. What's usually the first thing you do? All right, today we're going to talk about Chapter 12. And so get your PowerPoints out. We're going to start with, rational equations. So then you jump right in. Did you check to see if anybody else already knew what rational equations are? Do they know what rational means? Do they know what an equation looks like? Sometimes we as faculty think, oh, well, I'm the expert, so I need to take control of this class because I'm the all-knowing person. So a lot of your students know things, they remember things. We just don't give them the benefit of the doubt sometimes. Hey, I was guilty of doing that too, and I felt like, nobody knew how to program, and so I got to make sure that people know what a variable is and how to declare it. And so this type of activity can happen at the first of class. And you might think, well, I don't have time to do this. I've got to cover these 16 chapters. Pull it back, okay? Because if you develop engaging activities, guess what? Your students are practicing writing. They're practicing inquiry. They're practicing collaborating with each other. That little activity we did just a while ago got you moving, got the blood pumping, and I got your attention. So think about those types of things. Also, got to be very intentional with your lessons. And sometimes people think of this whenever we were going over this. Sometimes I had faculty who were like, well, this is not K-12, Diane. I understand that, but you should have an outline or a plan of what you're going to cover in class. That way you plan out your class. It's very intentional. You're not losing any time going, okay, what was I going to cover again? And then you got 5 minutes space and you're flipping through things. Okay, I want y'all to do this real quick. if you have a lesson that's already planned out, then makes things a whole lot smoother. Also, teaching strategies, like I mentioned, giving your students opportunities to practice those skills. We want them to be what? Critical thinkers. We want them to communicate. We want all these wonderful things for our students, but how are we helping them develop those skills? People need to practice. So you need to give them opportunities every time they come to class. So here's an example of a course. You know, I've got how many outcomes there are for. Very important to pay attention to what you're expecting students to do. Demonstrate something, describe something, right? Create. Those are all things that require a little bit more than just memorizing facts. Now, it is important for people to memorize things. I know I've worked with health sciences faculty, and I realize that there are things that need to be memorized. I mean, they are. And there's math equations and formulas that need to be memorized. But what am I going to do with that formula or that equation other than memorize it? So you want to develop activities that require students to do things and not just regurgitate information. So I'll get back to this in a minute. Some of the hardships I know that we experienced when working with faculty when we started this initiative was, you know, I brought together some social and behavioral sciences faculty, and, you know, the government class had like 9 outcomes, and then the history had 3. And guess what? The 3 outcomes in the history class had nothing to do with the wars, the dates, the everything. It had nothing to do with that. It had to do with research and analyzing and synthesizing information. So you still have freedom to pepper in your personality into the class. If you are somebody who loves to have students do some kind of project where they're going out and researching stuff, then do a project on whatever it is you're passionate about in history. So those are things to think about. Those are the things that we got our faculty to do. It's very challenging, and it is a lot of work. I will say that up front, because you're having to record lectures. You have to really sit down and come together as a group. This doesn't happen overnight, but it's so important. And, you know, where are my administrators in here? Raise them high. It is very important for us, all right, it's very important for us to ensure that our faculty are empowered. Because if they're not empowered, then what's going to happen is the same thing. You go to class, frustrated, students don't do homework, students don't do this, students. Let's work together to find a way to make sure that our faculty have the appropriate resources and support to develop courses that are meaningful and create meaningful learning experiences for students. That's what the 8-week format has done for us. Faculty have really embraced their power in developing courses. I have Calculus 2 faculty that are flipping their classroom. They've never done that before. And I'm very proud of them because they took a leap of faith that, okay, well, you know what, my students aren't doing so well. I need to do something different. And it's very scary because you're relinquishing some control. There's nothing more scary than letting it go. Let it go, right? Can't hold me back. No. But it is empowering once you see the students, the look on their face, the excitement that they want to come to Calculus 2 class. We're getting positive feedback. I don't have numbers today because this is a new implementation for my Calculus 2 person, but he has already expressed that students have come up to him and said, oh my gosh, I love this so much more. This is so much better, because they can be in class and ask questions while they work on problems together. They've already watched the lecture at home. Now they're in class doing that. Same thing with our A&P faculty. There's a lot of content in science and math, and they've been able to develop those types of classes. And just keep an open mind. It's scary. It's a lot of work. But if you're tired of being frustrated about students not doing what you expect them to do, then you need to make a change, okay? So now I want to toss to my colleague, Jennifer. She's going to continue talking about the rest of the process.
First of all, I refuse to believe that I live in a world where none of y'all could name your Star Wars characters. So if you don't know Star Wars or you haven't seen it, don't tell me. I don't need to know. I'm going to start forward here a little bit. Good morning, y'all. How are y'all? How many of y'all know where Odessa, Texas is? How many of y'all heard of Friday Night Lights? Don't judge us based on that, but that's us. Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here. It's cold. We left 80-degree weather in Odessa, Texas, but it's all right. We're making it. So my name is Jennifer Myers, and I serve as the dean over the School of Business and Industry. I was not always on the dark side of administration, as we refer to it at Odessa College, or the faculty refer to us sometimes. So I did start out as the Department Chair of Criminal Justice in January of 2012, actually. The first female Department Chair of the Criminal Justice Department, so yay for that. I say all that to say that I was a very unconventional hire. Dr. Williams, our president, likes to remind me of that on numerous occasions. In a good way, I hope. In a good way. So when I started, I had two gentlemen working for me who had been cops for over 30 years. They were older. They had been at the institution for a while. They weren't crazy about me. That's okay. I got over it real quick. And so did they, because they resigned, unfortunately. I remember sitting in my first department chair meeting, and people were talking about WECM, GIPWE, ACGM, TEA, TEEX, all this stuff. I'm like, I've made a mistake, y'all. I've made a poor life choice. Here I am, a little over 7 years later, and I'm loving my job, loving life. So I'm over several programs. I used to be over the criminal justice program, but now I'm over the School of Business and Industry. So that includes mostly workforce, all workforce, welding, the industrial technology is welding and precision, cosmetology, culinary arts, occupational safety, the business professions. Oscar actually gets to work for me. Congratulations. What am I forgetting? Auto and diesel technology. How can I forget them? So those programs fall under my leadership. And I really have a passion for workforce education, and I didn't realize I had that passion until I started working at Odessa College. And so it started definitely with criminal justice. We did fall under the Career Technical Workforce Education Division at the time. And when I was in my final interview with Dr. Williams, he asked me, what will you do differently with this department? And honestly, my background is a crime scene investigator. I was never a police officer. So I didn't carry a gun, I didn't arrest people, and I hate to burst bubbles, but I always do. It's not like what you see on TV. So sorry if that was your dream and I just burst it. I ruin student dreams every day when I tell them. It's not like CSI. But I said, I took a look at your program, and it's very geared toward policing. Nothing wrong with that, but there are so many other opportunities in the field of criminal justice that we're just not touching on. We're probably missing a lot of students who are interested in criminology, criminal justice, and we're not getting them because they don't want to be police officers. They want to do something else. So when the two gentlemen who were working for me resigned, I was able to hire two really great instructors. They were my first hires. One was a forensic interviewer, and one had been a police officer for 24 years. And I had actually worked with both of them. And so we were really babies, actually, in the higher ed world. So to some degree, I had an advantage in that we didn't really know what we were doing. And I will still tell you, we didn't know what we were doing. But we knew that our curriculum was lacking. We weren't teaching about probation and parole. It was 2012. We weren't teaching about Homeland Security. If you're familiar, you're familiar with September 11th and all of those things. We weren't teaching any of our students about Homeland Security. We weren't teaching any of them about human trafficking. They were leaving our program not knowing the things that they needed to know. We knew that much. So I had an associate dean at the time, again, because we didn't know what we were doing. And we said, how do we track where we're duplicating concepts? Because I don't know if you have this here, but the state has limited us to 60 semester credit hours in a degree program. So we have to be really, really careful, and we decide what do we have to teach these students to prepare them for the workforce or a career in criminal justice. So my associate dean at the time was like, well, have you tried course mapping? And we were like, what's that? Don't know that. What is that? So that's why I skipped to this slide, because it became such an integral part, really the foundation that allowed us to make the transition to 8-week courses. Really, really helpful. Prior to that, my instructor, one of them, he was one of the ones that resigned. And I have a textbook with me. Unfortunately, OER resources, they haven't really paid a lot of attention to workforce yet. We're working on it. So I do still have textbooks in some of the criminal justice classes. He was reading word for word out of this textbook, verbatim. When we cleaned out his office, he had highlighted to like chapter 4.5. That's how we knew how far he had gotten. So again, don't let this dictate your class. Don't let this dictate what you're teaching your students. Because if something happens in the world of criminal justice, DNA broke a cold case. I'm not going to say, well, that's not in the chapter, so we're not going to talk about how that relates to criminal justice today. Okay? So what we did is we course mapped every single course that we had. So on one side, we listed all the learning outcomes that WECM told us we needed to have in that course. And then we looked at the program as a whole, and we said, okay, what do we need them to leave here with as a whole? And then we started taking out some courses, and we started adding some more in. Did you know that there is a Homeland Security course? There is a human trafficking course. There's a cyber crimes course. And so we found those areas in our program where we were duplicating concepts. We pulled back on those, and we brought in some new concepts. So I'm going to go back. Maybe. I'm just not patient enough, apparently. Okay. So one of the things you might hear is, well, in 8 weeks, I can't fit 16 chapters in 8 weeks. Probably not. That's okay. It's not the Bible on criminology. So what concepts does the state say you have to teach? And what concepts do you all know as content experts do your students need to have to either move to the next class, transition to a 4-year, go into a career? That's what you want to talk about in your faculty group. And I will double down on what Diane said. You got to talk to each other. You got to talk. And that was a challenge. Diane can speak more to that than I can, because like I said, I had 2 new people. We didn't know any better. We came from industry. We didn't know any better. So we were like, oh, yay, look, we're doing all this fun stuff. And other people looked at us like we were crazy. So Diane can talk about that challenge. So if you are still using a textbook, fine. You don't need to necessarily hit all 16 chapters, 15 chapters, whatever. You've got to discuss it as a team, though. What do you want them to know? And then what, I don't even cover whole chapters. I cover concepts. That's what you're looking at. What concepts do they need to know? So again, focus on those outcomes. But you as a team need to define what those outcomes are in your faculty team. And administrators, let me double down on what Diane said. Give them the freedom to discuss that with your guidance, I mean, you don't want them to go too crazy, I guess. You don't want them to talk about something way off topic. But in our experience, this really helped us to become more intentional about what we were doing. Developing assessments. I noticed that when I looked at the syllabi for the classes when I very first started as department chair, there were 2 grades taken the entire semester. One was a midterm, and one was a final. And they were 25 questions each, all multiple choice, that I could have given to my dean who knew nothing about criminal justice, and he could have passed it. So were we really assessing that those students knew what they needed to know to go to work or transfer? We were not doing that. So they have to be manageable. You have to balance what you're offering. You can't count quizzes and tests as 90% of your grade. We all know the real world. I don't have things memorized. I never had the penal code memorized. I always had a book on my desk. Let me look up that penal code because I don't remember if this is a felony or when this becomes a felony. You want them to understand the concepts, and you want to be able to scaffold those concepts. I'm not a history teacher, but can I lecture all year and then at the end your final exam is a 10-page paper? But I've never told you about APA style. I've never showed you how to research. I've never showed you how to do citations. I've never showed you how to argue a point. But your 10-page paper at the end of the semester is 90% of your grade. Not really fair. Not really a fair assessment, and not intentional. So one of the classes I love to teach is crime scene investigations. And the end of the class, the assessment is a crime scene investigation. And there's blood, and there's fun stuff. There's a fake body. It's all fun stuff for me. Sorry. I know we did a professional development one time, and they used an article about the BTK serial killer. I promise you, we traumatized people, y'all. And we were all like, oh, we don't get it. We thought it was interesting. No, we traumatized people at Odessa College. So, but I don't start with them expecting to know how to work a crime scene. So in 8 weeks, they learn how to take photos. That's step 1, documentation. Then they learn to do measurements. Then they do their own crime scene sketch. Then they learn how to write reports. So at the end, they have one culminating assessment that they've had all this experience and all this time to build on their skills. More importantly, they're aligned with your learning outcomes. So you're not just, remember Diane said, oh, you need to know when the War of 1812 happened and you need to know who all these generals and battles and blah, blah, blah. No, I need you to be able to work a crime scene when you go out. So we need to look at the outcomes. So what do they need to know? So make sure your assignments support that, your assessments. And then you can really tell what they're learning. And then you have a class. It is hard work. You have to plan. You have to write lessons. You have to decide the pacing. And if you don't know how to do that, find your resources on campus. Find your mentors, your friends, your champions of this process. I don't need the crime scene investigation to be 90% of their grade to understand that they got it. Maybe it can be 20% because I already know they can take photos. I know they can write reports. I know they can bag and tag evidence. Okay? Another important thing is a common syllabus. So the Criminal Justice Department is now, when we started, there were 3 full-time people. I think they're now up to 6 or 7 full-time people. And we actually started 8-week terms, y'all, with our dual credit kids because they were struggling with 2 16-week courses at one time. And when we changed to 8 weeks, it was fantastic. And we had so much growth in dual credit, that's why I had to keep hiring people because it increased our enrollment so much. But the common syllabus is important. Again, it takes communication. Hey, Troy, that's one of my guys that I hired. What are you teaching in criminal investigations? Let's sit down and talk about it. Because if a student takes criminal investigations with Mr. Thomas, he should get a similar experience when he takes it with Dr. Myers. So that we're at least in agreement on those major assessments. Again, you can have individuality, but for the most part, students should be getting a similar experience regardless of who's teaching the same course. And so that leads us back to course map. That's why I wanted to start with course mapping, y'all. Let me see what time it is. So this is another opportunity. I don't know if Dr. Carrasco, do you want to talk about a Think Pair Share? So that's my part, guys. Thank y'all for letting me take your time. And I'll let Dr. Carrasco have it back.
Good job. Thank you. Yes, thank you. Okay, so actually I do want you to get a piece of paper out. Surely you have one. If you don't, your neighbor does, because we support each other. I'm not going to have you answer this question. I'll explain. Actually, I want you to answer different questions. But before I give you the question, once we started doing all these collaborative projects where we got faculty together to talk about their outcomes, their courses, it was difficult because people had difference of opinions, and that's okay. You know, you don't have to always agree on everything. Everyone's an individual, but you do have to come to a compromise. And why do you have to do that? Because it's not about you. It's about your students. And you have to remember that. We all have a job because our students come, they pay tuition, fees, and they keep coming back, hopefully, right? The state doesn't, I don't know about y'all, but the state doesn't give us a whole lot of money. I mean, they're good to us, but most of our funding comes from tuition and fees. So we owe it to them. We're a community college. That means we belong to the community. We serve the community. And remember, we're open access. And so you're going to get the students that you get. Some of them are prepared, and some of them are not. Some of them don't know how they're going to pay their electricity bill tomorrow. And you're, looking at them going, why didn't you do your homework? You're so underprepared. This is ridiculous. Why are you this? Why are you that? Maybe you don't say those things, but sometimes we think those things. So we really need to be careful how we go into the classroom and the things that we think about and the assumptions that we make, because it's human. I mean, it's human for us to do those things, but you just have to step back for a minute and put yourself in their position. I didn't have to worry about paying bills and all those things when I was going to college because I lived at home with my parents. I didn't worry about that. So whenever I started teaching, I started learning, some students will disclose things to you, right? I mean, if you have that connection with them and it's really real, people getting kicked out of their homes because they have, come out to their parents and as being gay or bisexual, whatever that's a real problem. And we don't think about those things whenever we go to the classroom because what are we thinking about? I got to assign these 30 problems, every other, 1 through 50 odds. I know because I did it. I was a math teacher. I did it. Those are things that you need to think about too, okay? So once we started getting people talking to each other and then they were sharing things, then where we led to that was professional learning communities. So we have ongoing professional development, and our current Dean of Teaching and Learning has added things like peer observations, and we'll talk more about that in the breakout session. So we've really added to things in teaching and learning to help people be more collaborative with each other and share ideas. And that's where we came up with the professional learning community. So every, at least once or twice a month, the faculty get together as a department, and all they do is talk about teaching and learning. None of this, the dean gave us all these things, let me go over these calendar dates, and the dean said we got to do this and that. Nothing that has to do with departmental, daily operational things. It is what goes on in the classroom, struggles that people have, and how you can overcome those struggles and challenges with your students. So that's what that. Now, what I do want you to answer, now that you got your paper, I do want you to take 1 minute, because how much time do I have? My watch lost the battery, and it's driving me nuts. 9 minutes. Okay. So I want you to take 1 minute to write down what are some of the things that we've talked about, and it's been quick today. Maybe what are some of the things that maybe you already do as a faculty group in your department, or what are some of the things that, hey, I want to try this. I want to learn more about this. So I'll give you 1 minute to do that. What are some of the things maybe you already do? What are some of the things that, hey, I want to try this. I want to learn more about it. And go. "24 seconds. Okay. So I gave you a minute to write down what are some of the things that maybe you're already doing. What are some things that, hey, I want to learn more about that. Now I want to take you the next 1 minute, or maybe two, is I want you to share with each other, share with an elbow partner. Before I let you do that, this is called the Think, Pair, Share. It's very quick. And again, people, I don't have time for that. I got to cover this stuff. How do you check if your students got what you covered? Oh, I covered chapter 10 today, so I'm good. Yeah, but did the students understand it? Did they grasp it? This is a very nice, quick way to get that. And they get them talking to each other, which is important. Again, you need to give them time to practice what? Communication, critical thinking. Aren't those the two things that employers say that our students don't have? Got to give them time to practice. So 1 minute or 2 minutes. One person needs to be able to share, and then let the other person share. And go. Okay, you have about 30 seconds, so 30 seconds. Make sure both people got to share. All right, thank you. I heard some really great discussion. I heard Star with nursing. I heard her say, I just need to find a way to get, figure out what the meat is of the content to go into 8 weeks. Nursing is very difficult. I know because I want to share a quick story. Our LVN program was really struggling. The instructors were all over the place. There were no outcomes. There were outcomes because the state tells us there are. But people didn't realize they were there, and there weren't any program outcomes defined. We had to wrangle that group together. People were angry at times, but then you got to come to a compromise. And I can proudly say that group, they got a leader in there. They got, she took that group and had them collaborate, working together. And they got their outcomes. They developed classes that are flipped. So they did the flipped approach. They got a lot of mentoring from Dr. Crawford and his folks. And now our LVN dual credit program has some of the highest pass rates in the state. Like, we've been recognized by the consultants that work with the dual credit. And these are dual credit students. They're high school students, which, again, we're always worried about whether they can do it or not. So just think about it for a moment as to what you can do. I'm going to go ahead and stop now and open it up for questions. And so I'll ask Jennifer and Valerie to come up. So if there's anybody want to ask a question, maybe something somebody shared at your table.
My question is just a terminology question, really. When you reference dual credit and you moved your dual credit to 8-week, is your reference of dual credit to your early college program that you have on campus, or are you talking the high school taught, high school instructor-led dual credit terminology?
Option 3.
Go ahead.
Option 3.
No.
So option 3, there's early college, high school, which happens on our campus taught by OC faculty. There's dual credit that happens on high school campus taught by high school faculty. And there's dual credit that's the students stay on a high school campus, but they are taught by an OC faculty member. The criminal justice transplants students to the campus for those dual credit classes, as does the LVN program. And there are others where the college instructor for economics, for example, actually goes to the high school. So when they're referring to dual credit, it's the last two. It may be a high school teacher or it may be a college teacher, but it's not necessarily in the early college environment. Yes.
We are looking at faculty professional development, and I was curious if you had a suggestion about what do you think would be a good place to start, the most meaningful professional development that you would suggest.
Yeah, good question. For us, it was sitting in a room together and deciding what we wanted our students to learn, coming up with those program learning outcomes for the entire criminal justice program. But then course mapping, that just was a game changer for us. And now every course at the campus is mapped. So sitting down, agreeing on those assessments, and it is time consuming, but it's such great conversation. But that's literally the foundation on which we built everything else.
Diane?
I would also add that high engagement strategies, I would say, yeah, I think you do need to start there with designing the course. The next thing is, what are some high engagement strategies that maybe people already use, or doing some research on what's available, what's out there. There's so much out there that's free. It's just a matter of really sitting down and looking at what's out there, and again, talking to other people that might already do engaging, because I promise you that if you're just delivering content the way students want you to do, because they're uncomfortable too. They don't like it when you make them talk to each other. They don't like it when you have them write stuff down. They just give me, is this going to be on the test? But you have to teach them. You have to show them that this is the correct way of learning. And
I would add, lastly to that, these 5 things. Let that be your skeleton, because that gives you a why for all of the other pieces. Well, how am I supposed to conduct a highly structured course? What in the world does that mean? Oh, I'm glad you asked. Here's course mapping. How in the world am I supposed to interact and monitor all of my students? Well, I'm glad you asked. Here's engagement support. So if you use this as a framework, then it'll help guide the pieces that both of them are talking about.
So you talked a little bit about course objectives. Did you ever find that some of the courses you were just asking too much of the course? There were too many objectives and those kind of things. We have faculty who have pet objectives they've put in there, things of that nature. How did that happen, especially with maybe gateway courses or courses that lots of students take and you've got a lot of different opinions?
I'm going to give a 10,000-foot view and then invite the other two to certainly speak from their experiences. So as far as formal outcomes, Texas defines that. So when Diane says 8 versus 3, that's state mandated. But you're absolutely right. There's the informal requirements that get attached as outcomes. And that's where the collaborations come into play, is when a group of faculty has to talk through what do we need to ensure every single student who comes through this course, regardless of section, regardless of campus, regardless of teacher, gets. That's where you can start to come to the heart of what they can agree are the critical components, and then individual faculty can kind of work from there. Diane or Jennifer, did you want to add to that before we?
I will add that I challenge you to ask the question why, because I'm very passionate about programming and databases. So if I had my choice, I would spend more time on databases in my computer class. Well, I don't teach that class, but that's what I used to teach. But then somebody else was going, if you ask me, well, why? Why do they need to know that? That is a really big eye-opener, because if I can't answer that, if I answer that with, well, we've always taught it this way, you can't do that, okay? You've got to have, again, compelling reasons.
Okay, so they've asked me to make this the last question. I'm sorry. Final question.
Oh, thank you. So my questions, and I think it's the questions of some of the individuals in the room too, when we talk about this collaboration, this mapping, all this work that we're doing to massage the courses into 8 weeks, did you guys do this before you built your schedule or after you built your schedule?
Yes and no, both.
So course mapping predates 8 weeks. Course mapping helps the 8-week conversion process, but it predates it. So faculty, when Jennifer's talking about doing the course mapping with criminal justice, that started 6 or 7 years ago when they did that. So that is a tool that gives faculty a platform to talk through, okay, how am I going to do that? And one quick piece, when you switch to 8-week terms, there may be some faculty like the criminal justice instructor that Jennifer said, I can't stand and lecture for 6 hours in a day. Oh, thank God. Because standing and lecturing for 3 hours in a day might not have been the best idea. So 8-week terms through course mapping can help trigger improvement in pedagogical techniques. So the literal answer, the schedule happened years after course mapping started. But it can be a helpful framework for the schedule change in structure. Kara, you want to give?
Okay, we'll break for lunch. One quick announcement first. In order to be flexible and adaptable, you will see some pretty rainbow cardstock in your folders for the breakout sessions. Please ignore those. completely. We're going to adapt just a little bit. So when we come back from lunch at 12:15, thank you. If you're in one of these first 3 rows here, you'll stay in this room. And you'll be in this room for all 3 breakout sessions, and the facilitators will rotate. So you'll still get to see all 3 sessions. If you're in this row here, you'll go next door to the Connor room as well for other breakout sessions. And if you're in this last row here, columns. Yeah. If you're in this column here, you'll be in the Greyhound room, which you'll go out to the left. And it's in the conference center. So go left, and it'll be around the corner. So Greyhound room in this column. This column is the Connor room next door. I can learn. These last 3 columns will stay here. We'll start that at 12:15. Lunch is out in the lobby. There are tables set up in a T shape. There are 4 serving stations as well. So Gretchen is out there to help direct us as well. So thank you.